I've had a crazy few weeks, but back now. Hopefully, have some people join here soon. Wait a moment. Just post this couple places. Hi, hello, sorry, back, just adjusting some stuff. Hi, Paulo, how are you? Sorry. This is a sketchbook that belongs to Bindi, and I would love to show her spread on the initial spread here, but I haven't got her permission yet because she's all the way in Australia, in Tasmania, so doing good. Hope everything is good with you. My life is kind of crazy right now, but I think I'm doing well with it. I'm not sure how much I actually got through to my various social posts, but my last month has been, oh yeah, okay, so I did mention the plumbing. Right. So I guess I can complain about my last month, but to be honest, I'm feeling pretty good about it in retrospect. So I caught a flu in like at Halloween, handing out candy, and so you'll hear it in my voice. I haven't recovered yet. Oh, that's really yucky. Ugh. This is Van Dyke Brown Deep from PBR 29 from Mission Gold that I'm testing out. And it has gooped everywhere. Yeah, I gave out candy and I received some bug from, you know, the little plague monsters, and I have clearly something up with my immune system where it attacks itself. Some kind of autoimmune something. So in addition to making my thyroid fail, it also apparently means that I can't get a flu without being sick for a month. So I'm still coughing. Not too happy about that one. But other than that little tiny problem, then soon after that, my puppy, Ember, who is now 5 months old, so she was just over 4 months at the time, went into heat. So way early, like they weren't she wasn't really expected to have a first heat at all because she's scheduled to be, oh man, this is just like all binder that's coming out here. Sorry, let me try to show that. It's all binder. Yuck. Sorry, I'm just experimenting with some. I want to experiment with. I've been sort of fascinated with mixing graphite and watercolor. I might throw some ink in there. All the things you can do with combining media. And these sketchbooks are a great way to do that. Yeah, the little tricksters. So yeah, and then I will also use some of this stuff, which is this Cherry Pit Black liquid charcoal. I guess I should show what I am painting. It's hard for me to show the reference and my work at the same time, so unfortunately I'm gonna have to keep on pulling it back out to show it, but this is Canada Goldenrod, but it's in winter, so these seed pods, like, they're all yellow in late summer, early fall, and then in winter they turn to this. Yeah, so my puppy went into heat. Now, she had just been, like, she was just barely house trained. And then, you know, so she was still, we had like maybe a week where she hadn't had any inside accidents, and she was still very much like, you know, she needed to go out very frequently, being a little puppy, and then she went into heat. So then suddenly she went from, you know, needing to notify us all the time that she wanted to go outside to suddenly she had this drive to mark everywhere. And so she started having, I mean, they weren't even accidents. It wasn't inside accidents. It was just, she was peeing inside all over and getting to be like quite a large dog too. So it's more trouble than if it's a little 8-pound creature that you can lift up versus, you know, something that weighs, at that point, she was like 30-something pounds. Now she's 40-something, so that's like, now she's about just under 20 kilos, and she was over 15 at the time. So, yeah. So then I dealt with that, and then my main drain out of my house backed up. I had a sewer backup. Hi, Gabor, how are you? I am telling the saga of my last month that has been crazy, and how, oddly, despite my last month being crazy and bad, I'm actually feeling really good, like it's actually helping me. So I'll get to the positive part in a moment. But first, let's talk about the negatives. Let's get bad news out first. Yeah, so what was I saying? Right, so while dealing with having the flu and having a little puppy, like a not house-trained puppy in heat, who was then peeing all over the house, and then she would demand to go outside, and she would just mark all the neighbors' houses. Like, she was just a lot of extra work. And she was like extra cuddly, but also a little bit extra aggressive. So that was interesting. And then my sewer backed up. The main drain out of my house down to the city, it's 100 years old, and it was all full of tree roots and damaged and cracked. And so all at once, there was a geyser out of my, I tried to unplug what initially looked like a small clog in my shower, or in my toilet, and it caused a geyser of poop in my shower in the basement. So that was not fun. And then so this was like late at night on Monday, 2.5 weeks ago. And then it gets better. It gets better, but wait, there's more. I walked back upstairs, and of course, because we were concerned about the dog who was peeing everywhere because she went into heat at 4 months, we see this big puddle on the carpet, and Jordan asks, "What's that puddle?" And we assumed it was dog pee, so I started washing it and realized that every time I would press down on this puddle, there'd be more water coming up through the carpet. So it was not the dog, it was the broken drain, and it was seeping up through the basement slab. So the way houses are built here in Canada, we have, to prevent frost heave, most houses have a basement, like a level under your main floor, that's dug into the earth, and then there's a basement slab, which is just concrete poured down over the ground where it's dug out. And because the pipe had broken under that, it was seeping water up through that, and by water I mean sewage. So along the entire length of the pipe and up through the carpet. So that was a mess, and by the time I actually started calling, it was about 1 a.m. My husband freaked right out, like, this is crazy and stressful, and sort of had a panic attack and locked himself in front of a screen, which is probably a normal reaction to their sewage just coming up through your basement slab. But see, I reserve my freaking out for things that don't matter, like somebody offered some not quite positive feedback, or I remembered something that happened that was bad a decade ago. That's when I freak out. When there's an actual emergency, I function just fine. So I spent the next 45 minutes with a Google results of every 24-hour plumber, or every plumber that advertised 24-hour emergency service in my province, and just kept calling until I got someone. So that was fixed that night. And then the next day we had plumbers come in and drill over the course of the next 3 days, they drilled out here, even though we use metric in Canada, we also end up doing everything in imperial because we're right next to the US. So it's 30 feet, which is just under 10 meters, 9 meters of length of drainage pipe that needed to be excavated. So most of that was underneath our house, and some of it in our front yard, going out to the city. And then we also had to call the city to clear out their section of the pipe. So that all got done. But of course now they had to tear up all of the carpet in the basement. We had paneling on the walls, so that's been cut. In the basement washroom, we had actually a really nice tile job. Basement washroom overall, it's not the decor or choices I would make for a washroom, but the tile work was top notch, so we didn't want to touch it, but was past tense, because now in front of the toilet there's a section where they had to cut away they had to drill into the foundation, so they cut right through the tile. So that's that. Luckily, insurance paid for the tile. They paid for all of the repair to the pipe, and so all of the drilling, all of the whatever, they're going to pay for the cleanup crew. We're not quite sure how they're going to file it, so we might be able to also file for the cost of some of the replacement finishes. But now that everything's gone, we're going to refinish it differently, and actually take the opportunity to do things differently. We've been planning a renovation on the upstairs washroom, and now we're going to do both washrooms. So everything's a little different. So the past couple weeks, we've started rearranging my house, making, like, we used to have a media room, sort of like a TV room down in the basement, that also functioned as a guest bedroom. We've moved that into my husband's office, so now it's just a little bit more cramped in there. We're going to move some of the other stuff from the basement into the dining room, and we're going to clear out the living room entirely and make that into a wood shop, so all of the power tools and whatever that we used to keep in the basement are now going to go into the living room. And we're going to do a major renovation on the house, doing all of the basement finishes, 2 washrooms, and possibly while we're at it, we might do some other stuff. So I'm busy. And what's interesting is when I'm busy, I function a lot better. I've had a really, really, really tough time with some chronic health issues because of the pandemic and not having a structure, not having demands on my time. It's really thrown me for a loop where I've gotten not a whole lot done the past year. But when everything is in chaos, this is where I sort of wake up and start functioning a bit differently. So it's a huge adjustment, but now things are getting better. I'm no longer sick, or I'm gradually getting a lot less sick. I still have a lingering cough, but I'm not feverish. I'm not, yeah. And my dog's no longer in heat, so she's back to being like a well-behaved, nice little puppy who learns things, and isn't trying to get with every scary neighborhood dog. Isn't marking all over my house. She hasn't had an accident in days. It's amazing. She's like having a nap right now, and when she wakes up from her nap, I might need to take her out, or maybe Jordan will take her out, and then she'll come in here and it'll be fine. It'll be great. Yeah, so that's a huge relief. She's no longer like a little baby puppy either, so she doesn't take quite as much attention. And with the house, this creates some sort of structure around what I have to do, and gives me some motivation. So I'm actually feeling a lot more productive with other stuff and getting the rest of my life in order too, which is amazing and really good. So yeah, that's my story. How's everyone else? For anyone who came in partway through that, my life fell apart in the past month, more than it already had. Everything went wrong, including my sewage, my drainage, leaking sewage all over my basement. And this is good news for me, so yay! Okay, also, for anyone who's just come in, I am That has been a hectic month, but I'm glad you're most of it and being productive. Yes. Okay. So today I'm working in Bindy's sketchbook, and I'm sketching this Canada goldenrod. I'm gonna try to get as much. It's always difficult with can't really get both my reference, which is too tall, and my sketchbook all in the same frame, unfortunately. So I'm just gonna have to keep on showing you the reference in my Discord, which somebody can throw a link to, because once again, didn't put a link in my Discord. I've thrown an extra photo of this goldenrod. I'll also take more photos afterwards, so that my month has been rather unproductive. Unproductive months, you know, here and there are really good. I've had an unproductive year up until this month, so, you know, we're good. So I'm going to draw this sort of diagonally across a spread of 2 pages. That's my plan. To try to get as much of this goldenrod as I can. I'm definitely not going to finish this today, but hopefully I'll be able to get a fair bit done. My month was just busy. I haven't touched my art in weeks. Are either of you or anyone in chat taking time off for the holidays, and what does that look like for you? Like, are you seeing family? Are you taking some time for yourselves? I know that things are look very different all around the world right now and for the past few years in terms of COVID, etc. Please Discord. Thanks, Paulo. Yeah, I feel like I've been in sort of in some sort of cryo state for the past, I don't know, year. Just drawn some basic flowers, but after the next week I'm off for 2 weeks. Yay! So broke my new laptop charger and got only started most of the photos I took this year. That's awesome. Yeah, taking photos, that's another thing that I haven't really done in a while. Sorry, I need to refill my water. It's getting kind of gross, so I'm gonna do that. One moment. So I don't really want to deal with the mess of order for fulfillment during the holidays, despite the fact that it might be profitable. But I was thinking that I might do an end of year, after Christmas, a year-end like studio clear out, because I have a bunch of paintings. I just kind of want to get rid of stuff that's in frames that's hanging around, that's been around for a while. So free up some wall space, some frame space. And so I'm thinking that I might do a massive sale of unframed originals, like pull things out of their frames. And do a big sale of unframed originals at way reduced prices, and just, you know, try to jumpstart, just because I haven't done much the past several months, and I've sort of suspended sales and suspended everything, sort of jumpstart getting back into the world of actually selling art or actually doing anything with my time. Done enough hanging around feeling sorry for myself. So what I'm doing here, I guess I'll go through this, is I have this very fluffy looking, like these fluffy looking mounds, and I'm really looking forward to, been really sort of fascinated with the idea of using granulating paints mixed, like heavily granulating paints mixed with water-soluble charcoal or water-soluble carbon and graphite. So pencils, and mixing pencils and like water media and heavily granulating paints to create these like really I find that in winter, a lot of our foliage, a lot of our like dried foliage that we get has this sort of dusty look to it. And it looks almost like it's, you know, like it's got a dusting of carbon, like it's got a dusting of graphite. And it's delicate and it's detailed, but it's still got this roughness to it. So I've been trying to experiment with what can I do to create that look with available materials. Sorry, I feel like I'm not really communicating what I mean here. But I'm adding some water-soluble carbon and some graphite to some already heavily granulating muted colors that I have in watercolor to create this like really muted, dusky sort of, yeah, worn out winter foliage look. Another one for the hoarding pile. Sorry, the sketchbook hoarding pile. What graphite are you using? Okay, what graphite am I using? I'm probably mostly going to be using, this is a 0.3 pencil. I have a 0.2 pencil here that's even better somewhere, but 0.3 pencil appeared first. I also sometimes like using these Derwent Sketching, the water-soluble graphite pencils, to add some details that I can soften up. And yeah, I'm just going to sort of experiment and do some wet washes and then some very careful dry brushing and some drawing of stuff. And this is a sketchbook, but this is an idea that I've sort of been playing with to an extent in sketchbooks and in other pieces. And I kind of want to do just a series of all of these different bits of foliage and plants that we see in winter, like growing in ditches and stuff, and there's a sort of unique look to plants in winter. Some of my studio mates just tease me about, I only paint dead things. Like, you're a botanical artist, why don't you paint live things? Why do you only paint things that are decaying? But Crusty and I think it's interesting to have stuff. So anyway, so I'm just sort of drawing the basic shape of where I'm gonna put these. Like, I'm gonna do a big wet wash, or substantial series of big wet washes, really, across here. But I wanted to sort of mark out where those are going to go with some pencil marking, so that I don't have to be making very quick decisions, or as quick as I'm working. So I guess part of this is also adjusting to the weather. So if I was doing this in summer, I might be more prone to just working in directly in watercolor, or doing less graphite prep work. But because this is winter in Canada, outside is just as damp as it always is, but it's also cold, so we are running heaters inside, which dries out the air inside. The relative humidity inside is very, very low. So in order to make up for that, I end up having to work a lot faster, especially working in the sketchbook paper. Like, it's going to be different a little bit if I was working on like 300 GSM, my best paper, because then it soaks up water, and so I can pre-soak it and then put in some paint details, but that's not going to work with this. Okay, so this is a supposedly Kolinsky sable brush that I got from SciArt, which is a discount art supply store at U of T in Toronto. It's like not the best quality brush, but I just want a really big brush, really big. It's a size 6. It's really big for me, especially for working in sketchbooks. And so then, I've just got, some shape here, and I'm gonna try to really water this down. And so the lighter areas, I'm gonna put some more yellow in, but they're still gonna be really, really light. And then we're in the middle, more water here. Then over on this side, I'm gonna have a little bit more of this pink. And then the other thing is, because this is sketchbook paper, I am assuming that it's not going to take very, very many layers of watercolor the way that a heavier all cotton paper would. What is this sketchbook? Sorry. I'm assuming this is a Hanamula sketchbook. Well, this is interesting. Okay. Sorry, trying to figure out if I can find a label for what this sketchbook is without giving away the work done by other artists who have not agreed to have their work shown yet. Hi Joy, how are you? I was just telling people my saga of the last few weeks. It's all better now. All better now. So I like these like really subtle color transitions, and they'll be even more subtle because I'm going to work in graphite over this. But I just like, I'm wondering if I can just create some interest with really wet watercolor wash and then work in water-soluble carbon and water-soluble graphite to create some more detail. So that's what I've been experimenting with. Or I've had this like every time I see this winter foliage, and like honestly for the past several years and for a while, for a long while, like I didn't really know how to approach it, like how I would go about this, and I've sort of been like mentally experimenting with like, I wonder how I would do that. And I think I sort of found this answer, and I really want to do just a whole series of these. So Joy, I was telling Paolo and Gabor and whoever else is in here about how the disaster of the last few weeks has actually really, I mean, it feels like a positive in many ways, where I've just been, oh man, I've had like just the least productive garbage year. And I think it just really comes down to pandemic and like mental health breakdown. I've tried quite a lot of different water-soluble graphite pencils, and although I like them, I had a hard time layering on already activated layers. Like while they're wet or after they're dry. I've had good success with them in the limited capacity I've used them in, but you know, that's limited. Oy, that's quite exaggerated. It's a little much. Anyway, it looks like I'm trying to create, like, there's almost like, you know, there's just little hints, little pops of color here. Like, it's almost like there's this whole rainbow, but it's so muted that it's like barely visible. And so that's what I'm trying for, is to create that in watercolor. And then once that's already there, once that's already set, then with very little watercolor and, you know, some patient work with pencils, create the details on top of that is my hope. we'll see how that goes. I've done a little bit of experimenting with this with a few other subjects. Both. Okay. All right. Yeah, I would be curious to know like what you've tried and how you're trying to layer. I mean, I don't know if I can offer advice because again, my experience is limited. I've had good success with water-soluble graphite. I've tried a few different kinds. I don't know, you may have tried more. You know, I've tried 2 or 3 kinds that just happened to be locally available. And I thought they were really cool. But it's one of these like, you know, useful for a few very specific things sort of products. And also, again, like I sort of more or less immediately sort of saw the potential for something like this. But as is so often the case, and I'm sure that all of you will empathize with this, I often have a lot of thoughts about what I would like to do, and my abilities aren't there yet. It can be frustrating, and it can lead to like just not getting anything done, which I'm sure is another thing that I've been struggling with, is just not getting things done because I'm trying to do things where my ability hasn't caught up with my dreams. Sorry, maybe if I lift this a little bit. I'm just trying to get you all of what I'm working on. If I move this a bit more, so you can see I've got, this is Van Dyke Brown Deep over here from from Magello Mission Gold, PBR 29, which is a weird pigment. And then I'm also using Blue Apatite, obviously not genuine, from Daniel Smith, but it's what's in my palette, so I'm going to use it up. Also Monte Amiata Natural Sienna, also from Daniel Smith, because it's in my palette, so I'm using it up. I tried building up darker layers in Watercolor Sketchbook. If I had enough pencil down before it got nice and dry, but I see. Okay, so what I have found is that it's useful for like final dark layers. I wasn't doing so much building where I was, you know, wetting and then re-wetting and then re-wetting and then re-wetting and layering on top on top on top. I would take, I would use some to spread out to create a, I don't know, do I have, sorry. I don't know where I put it. I would use it to create some like light wash sort of effects, and then do most of my work in just regular graphite. And then I found it very useful to create some sort of wispy details by using water-soluble carbon, as well as like with a fine brush, as well as using something like this, but this is the light wash, so this is HB, and I think there's a 4B 8B and a 6 or here's a 4B medium wash. And I think there's a dark wash. It's an 8B or a does it say not here? No. What do I have? Nope. One thing. Another thing. It's either an 8B or a 6B. I don't know. And then use those, you know, wet or on wet paper to create some much darker details, but all in one shot, basically. So I think it's just down to use. I didn't really try layering. I can easily believe that layering is a real challenge. Like gradual layering. And to be honest, I think that might also be part of why I'm less fussy about paper than some botanical artists, is because I actually don't do as much layering as many botanical artists do. Like I still do a lot more layering than a lot of watercolor artists, just in general watercolor media. But some botanical artists really take their time with building up layers slowly, and I don't. Really think there's any other way of expressing that. So I think part of it is like the paper. Is if you're using sketchbook paper, it's likely cellulose or lighter than like a lighter weight, even if it's cotton, than a paper that you might use for finished painting, which means that there's just less, like no matter what you're doing, it's gonna start picking up in further layers and fuzzing out and causing you problems. And that's definitely something that I've run into in pretty much every sketchbook. And then the other factor that I've found with sketchbooks is because you're carrying them around and you're taking them in and out and you're working on previous pages, the paper in it degrades much faster. So I've even had sketchbooks that are bound with, you know, what I would use usually. They're, you know, custom made sketchbooks where the paper just degrades right away, where it you know, it's Fabriano or it's Arches, but like the, you know, the heavyweight version, it's exactly the same paper as I might use for a finished piece, but because it's not because it's something that I'm taking outside and then I'm bringing inside and I'm keeping it closed and whatever, the sizing on the paper goes sort of funny after not very long, and so it just doesn't behave quite the same way. And that's just a downside of sketchbooks, I guess, unless you're going to be painting really frequently in your sketchbooks. But I guess it's also just a, you know, reminder to loosen up a little with sketchbooks. Sometimes a much needed reminder for me that, like, I don't need to, sketchbook work doesn't need to be perfect. Cool. I look forward to seeing your experiments. Also, I'm really sorry, guys. I haven't been super attentive on Discord either. I mean, the same reasons that I haven't been doing anything else. But hopefully, with everything going on now that I'm so much busier, I will be more attentive on my channels. I'll also be freezing payments on Patreon for December. I didn't in November because November was so crazy that I honestly kind of forgot. But I also didn't do much on Patreon in November. So I will freeze them for December, and then I'll do a little bit. I do a holiday special or something to make up for the fact that in November I did nothing. I've got a pile of blog posts coming out. I just need to time them, figure out what comes out when. And then I have a whole bunch of like in progress video, and maybe I just need to sit down and do some video editing and just do a week of video editing. Much as I hate it, maybe that's how I will spend my holidays. I should probably experiment with some of the different cobalt, like the ceruleans for this. I sort of swore off cerulean at some point, like the you know, the sky blue colors, the cobalt compounds. Early on, when I was dead set against anything opaque or granulating, I just didn't get it, and you know, I was told, oh, that's really useful for skies, but then it granulated, and it kind of drove me mad. I had a really hard time with granulation for a really long time, and I've warmed up to it a lot, where I really like granulating paints now. Not for all purposes. Sometimes I still really like some transparent, non-granulating stuff. But for applications like this, like a little bit of granulation can really work some magic. But as a result, I don't really have any ceruleans. I just, you know, learned to work with other blues, and I have so many other blues that I just never got back to it. I'm just realizing here, like I'm using this, oops. I'm dipping my hand in my paint. I'm realizing here I'm using this apatite, which first of all, it's kind of gummy, so I don't really like the texture of it. And secondly, like it's dark and sort of greenish. Like I feel like something that's a little bit More on the reddish side, but also a little bit lighter might work better for this specific application. So I think I really just need to dive back into the ceruleans, figure out what the fuss there is. Okay, and then I'm gonna leave this for a while and start working out where this stem is. Woo, kind of crazy. What a crazy bunch of stuff. There's gonna be something over in front of it too. Cloud of winter vegetation effect is really pretty. Yeah, so I'm trying to like maintain a little bit of that, but then add some details and some of the like spiky sort of roughness I'm hoping to add uh, with later layers of watercolor. Sorry, not watercolor, of later layers, I guess, will mostly be in graphite and pencils, and just like a little tiny bit of dry brush watercolor. I think there's some unexplored potential here, and I'm just trying to figure out how to work it. Hi, Stephen. How are you? Okay, so it might be a little unclear what I'm doing right now. Oh, yeah. No, it's turning. No, I need to turn. See this? See this mess? That's what the lower bits of this, like the foliage part, looks like. So I'm trying to create some of that mess in graphite here, and then I'll refine from there as well. Sorry. So of those watching this, Stephen, you might be most familiar with my subject. So I'm working on a sketch of Canada goldenrod for Bindy's sketchbook. She's in Tasmania, and so I decided that it would be really nice to give her like not just a Canadian subject, but also something in winter, because they don't really get winter proper in Tasmania. I mean, I'm sure the Tasmanians will argue that yes, they do get winter. They get more winter than most of Australia, but not like we have here in Canada. So I'm experimenting with using graphite and carbon and very granulating watercolor to create some of the foliage. This is Canada goldenrod that we see in ditches throughout the winter, like in ditches, sides of roads, edges of the railway. There's a sort of look that's like it's worn down, it's rough, it's spotted, little bits of vegetation. So a lot of shape and curve and negative space in that. Yeah. I also, yeah, I really do love that look, those like ochre. There's like a whole rainbow in a lot of the like it's all very, very muted, but it's all like these dark, grungy colors, but it you know, just sorry. Yeah, just looks like worn, all weather worn, all and so I've been sort of toying with how to create that look for quite a while. You know, these weird, like, they're ochre, but they're purple, but there's like a hint of like they look cool. Really, really off white in a lot of these dried pods, and then the foliage ends up being like this muted. It's fascinating. It's a fascinating puzzle. And so I think that I have found some of my answers, and it'll take a whole bunch more exploring, but things like sketchbook exchanges are really useful for this sort of experimentation. Walk in Waterloo Park often. There are nice rushes near the train stop near Seagram Drive. Okay, so I can tell you exactly where I got this. The GO train line where it continues. So near Park and Dominion is actually the cross street, but if you continue along the train line from Toronto, you know, past Kitchener Station, past the final station, out past King, past Park, just follow that. There's a section where there's the old factory, the Airboss factory, and right beside that there's a train track, so that's where the GO trains, so that's the commuter trains to Toronto, go to rest at night. And there's a section of track there that has a ditch beside it, and it has a whole bunch of bulrushes and milkweed and pearly everlasting and goldenrod like this. Yeah. Yep, exactly. So that's where I got this. Okay, I should stop touching things that I just painted with my hand. That is a way to damage my finish. And I can just painting in some of these details and these all in here. Old factory there, yeah, exactly. And unfortunately, these my inability to film or select options or edit to suggest anywhere other than exactly where I live means that it's probably pretty easy to trace exactly which one is my house. But regardless, if you're a stalker, you can stalk me, I guess. But hopefully our people are nice and I don't acquire too many stalkers. I've actually also got my home address listed as one of my business addresses on online listings for tax reasons. Well, sorry, specifically, it's a place of business, right? So it's where I do a lot of my work, as well as occasionally have clients and do host my workshops from my home studio. So in order to write that off on my taxes, that makes it simpler. So that also means that I'm unfortunately very searchable. This is the downside to the internet age. I'm liking the big Quiller style palette after having it for a few months now. Awesome. I have yet to use mine for its intended purpose. Like, I have used it, but I haven't actually loaded up the wells. I've just sort of been playing with it a bit and using different paints in it. Yeah, to be honest, I've not been doing as much painting in general as I ought. Sorry, my ADHD coach would give me some trouble for, using words like should. But I like the mixing area. The wells are nice, but not mandatory. Yes, I do like how big and open the mixing area is in the middle of that big round. Sorry, I would show it, but it's sort of inaccessible under some other stuff right now. But not to worry, that's one of my videos coming up, is filling that up and whatever. Yeah. So, I've also been curious about playing with pyrography and what's it called? Scratchboard. So there's a darker section behind here I'm trying to build in, and definitely like this is just lifting right up off this paper, so that's just gonna have to deal with that, I guess. Work with it. I don't have other options. So this is, it's interesting. It's worth experimenting with these things in sketchbook paper, but it's also, the way something works on this paper is going to be different than how it works on 100% cotton heavyweight paper. So there are some similarities, and it is worth experimenting with, not the world's most expensive paper before committing to a finished piece, but Pyrography makes me think of cyan, of course. Scratchboard, is that for thin edge type lines? Yeah, so scratchboard is like it's a clay board that's often it's finished with black top layer, although it doesn't need to be. And you can both paint on top of it as well as scratch away lines with various tools. Gonna pop off. It's looking gorgeous. Thank you, Joy. It was really nice to see you. I've been using Fabriano fat pad paper, very rough and regular. Nice. Does Quiller use something like that? Again, I think you are the expert on Quiller. I really could not tell you what Quiller uses. Not that I don't like Quiller's work, you definitely know more about Quiller than I do. So possibly. It's one of these like kind of neat mediums that like is interesting to experiment with, but like actually very few artists seem to choose as a primary thing. That I often wonder why. Why certain things are popular and others aren't. Clayboard? Yeah, so you can get clayboard and then finish the top with a layer of black ink or paint. I think clayboard also comes as a scratchboard product that has like a black layer on the very top. But it doesn't it doesn't have to be black. You can start with just regular clayboard and then work your colors however you want and scratch away layers and repaint. And of course, then you get a very textured surface, so you do have to be aware of that, where if you're, gouging further and deeper into it, if you go and scan it, it's not gonna, maybe that's why it doesn't scan particularly well. But then on the other hand, like neither do most paint media, and yet, oils and acrylics are plenty popular. I don't know why scratchboard as a substrate hasn't been more explored than it seems to have been. I tend to just gravitate back to the basic watercolor, graphite, ink. But sometimes I like mixing things, sometimes I like trying new things. Yeah, so I'm not sure quite how much of this I am going to get done. I do still have a puppy who is napping right now, but when she gets up, she's gonna need to go outside. She's a lot less trouble than she's been in the past. For weeks and weeks, she was just trouble because she was so tiny and so like into everything. Needed to go pee constantly because she drank so much Then she went into heat when she was very, very young, and it was like, you know, she was just growing out of some of these behaviors, and it was all the worst behaviors, only now she was big, where she was mostly house trained and then not. But instead of being an 8-pound creature with correspondingly small peas, she was huge, and instead of just like not having bladder control, she was deliberately marking things, which was worse because she'd choose like a pile of clothing or something where, you know, places where usually even before she was trained at all she wouldn't touch. She'd want to come snuggle on the bed, except she'd be bitey, and then she would pee. She's not allowed on our bed anymore. But she's out of heat, thank goodness, and she's back to being a normal puppy. Does it give a soft melty effect? I like a little gouache contamination and otherwise thin paint. Sorry, the clay board? No, it's almost the opposite. It gets like way more saturated than, or my experience with aqua board. Actually, it depends. If you use the clay board, like the actual clay board product, clay board, like board written with an O-R-D, it's made by Ampersand, I believe. That stuff is extremely smooth. So it's like painting on Yupo or like some other, or like that rock paper. Like it just, you know, it doesn't sink in. It just all just moves around. Because it's just so smooth and it doesn't have the same absorption. If you're using watercolor on that. Now, they also make a product called Aqua Board, which has a little bit more of absorbent ground, and it's also a little bit more textured. It feels like a fairly smooth cold press, I would say, but it sinks in and it holds color in a way that like seems to get much more vibrant. But that's just treating it like a regular paper without using the ability to scratch away at the surface. And I kind of just, at some level, I want someone to teach me. At some level, I want to find, like there are a few artists who actually use this as primary medium, and I would love to find someone who will teach me how to use this stuff. I mean, I imagine that there's like some in-between option. They have a whole line of products, so I'm sure that if you take one of their products and treat it some way, sand it or whatever, like it might take some experimentation to see which finish works for what you want to do. But there seems to be enough of a range that, you know, something will. etching in case colored pencils don't take enough time already. Yes, well, so that's the other issue, is that there is a possibility to use things like aquaboard or what have you with watercolor or ink and or like any kind of paint product, and then etching, which will save you some time, right? Because it means that then you can have something like a watercolor finish, but with an ability to go back to white. So if you can work something using watercolor techniques and then scratch back some highlights really nicely, which is a really neat idea. I feel like I need some guidance to make the most of it, but it's interesting. But then of the people using scratchboard techniques, yes, a lot of them are using it with colored pencil, which, yes, does strike me as, okay, so it's like colored pencil, but even more work. I'm not the most patient person. A little gouache provides a melty surface to paint on, but maybe too messy a result at times. That's interesting. So using a gouache, like a thick layer of gouache or a thin layer of gouache? Casein also works that way. Like, it forms a fairly closed surface. So if you start out with a very absorbent watercolor paper, then you apply a thin layer of casein on top, relatively thin, and you let it cure, and then you apply your watercolor on top of that. It's not gonna stick. It's gonna slide around a little bit. Okay, well, that's my cue, I believe, to go take my dog out before she forces the issue. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye. I might come back sometime in the middle of the week or over the weekend and just do an extra session of this, because it's just kind of fun. Let you know. Bye.